This is Eric with Astrology for Awakening. We're going to talk about the new moon and its place in the lunation cycle, its place in our life cycle. As you know, in Astrology for Awakening, we approach each of the astrological aspects as a spiritual invitation, as an invitation to deepen our realization, our embodiment, and our expression of particular archetypal energies and gifts. And the moon cycle is such a beautiful rhythm for exploring, in particular, exploring our emotional intelligence and the ways that we care for the soul, our own soul and the soul of those in our life, even the soul of the world. So the moon moves around the zodiac like in our itinerant teacher. It goes from sign to sign, roughly in a 4-week rhythm, giving us an insight and an opportunity to explore and to understand the emotional gifts of each sign of the zodiac. Gifts that we can explore, that we can cultivate, and that we can integrate into our way of being. And as it travels from sign to sign, it also reveals the emotional wounds, the unredeemed emotional patterns of reactivity associated with that sign that we have not yet turned towards with loving awareness, that we can now wake up to, integrate, heal, and absorb into our way of being. So the focus of the lunar cycle is on this cultivation of emotional intelligence. You could call it emotional wisdom. The moon is the symbol, the astrological symbol of how we respond to and nurture, and how we feel into the world, whether that's our inner world or that's our intersubjective world with people that we interact with, or whether it's the soul of the world. The moon is the feeling into function. And the moon, of course, is always somewhere in the sky at any moment in time. And it's also somewhere in our natal chart. And so we're always experiencing a dynamic and a complex kind of weaving of emotional senses, feeling into the world around us and the world within us. Our core emotional or lunar curriculum for this life is symbolized by the moon in our natal chart. It's in a particular sign, a particular house, in particular relationships with other planetary energies. And that complex set of relationships and symbols defines our pathway. The moon in our chart is our pathway to becoming a more sensitive, a more skilled, more loving at caring for our soul's needs, our basic human needs, and others' soul's needs and their basic human needs. So it's the symbol also of the way that we can tend to our soul's wounds and to become a healing presence, if not a healing agent in our world. So every new moon is like a initiation into a 4-week intensive into a specific aspect of the lunar curriculum. And we get to consciously choose and practice and integrate a new, or maybe more accurately, a renewed way of caring for our soul, caring for our basic human needs with emotional intelligence. Because every sign that the moon moves through, every sign that any planet moves through, the signs of the zodiac themselves, in this approach to awakening with astrology, every sign represents a particular perspective, a particular pathway, and a particular way of practicing, of sadhana, of spiritual practice. And it brings, with the moon moving through the signs, it brings that perspective, that pathway, that practice into the foreground of our emotional curriculum for a 4-week period. So what are these 12 pathways that the moon is inviting us to explore? Well, we're going to go sign by sign. Aries. When the new moon is in Aries, we're initiating a 4-week intensive that invites us to study our emotional relationship with courage and to practice, to engage in practices where we fiercely embody courage in the face of the unknown. And that could be anything, right? For each of us, that's going to mean different things. When the new moon's in Aries, it's where am I being called to face courageously into the unknown? You know, it could be walking across that dance floor, inviting someone to dance with you. It could be sending in a proposal. It could be asking for a raise. It could be speaking to your child. It could be speaking to your partner. There's so many opportunities that it could be expressed in. But for each of us individually at that new moon in Aries time, we're being invited into a 4-week training where we get to explore and to cultivate that practice. And that's going to be the same for the rest of the 11. So let's just run through them without adding any spices or bells and whistles. Taurus. The new moon in Taurus invites us into this 4-week study of our relationship with emotional tranquility and peace, and to practice quietly abiding in the simple presence and even the simple pleasure of being. Gemini invites us to study our emotional relationship with communication and to practice purifying our channels of listening and purifying and playing with our channels of speaking out, giving voice to our perspective. Cancer new moon invites us into a 4-week study of our emotional relationship with emotions themselves, and to practice different ways of empathetically feeling into and embracing our inner life and the inner life of those around us, the inner life of the world. Leo new moon invites us into a study period where we begin to explore our emotional relationship with beaming your light out, and to practice during this period what it's like to wholeheartedly express the inside radiance of your being, the joy, the enthusiasm of your being on the outside. The Virgo new moon invites us into a 4-week practice or a 4-week inquiry into studying our emotional relationship to perfection and perfectionism, and to practice gently, wisely, refining ourself, refining our body, mind, and refining our offerings to the world. Libra invites us for a 4-week study of our emotional relationship with intimate others, whether they're in our home, in our family, in our workplace, with intimate others, and to practice, to cultivate practices for graceful self-regulation, like the scales, to self-regulate internally in order to be able to stay present and connected during conflicts or times of tension. Scorpio new moon invites us to study our emotional relationship with the shadow, with the taboo, with the hidden aspects of our inner life and our interpersonal life, and to practice decisively cutting through pretense without cutting anybody, without harming ourselves or others, in order to lift up, to reveal the dark and hidden truth. The new moon in Sagittarius invites us to study our emotional relationship with meaning and the felt sense of meaningfulness, and to practice discovering, to quote William Blake, the universe, discovering the world in a grain of sand, discovering infinite meaning in the sacred and the sacred in the ordinary, to go on a quest into the ordinary to reveal the deeper meaning. And Capricorn New Moon invites us to study our emotional relationship with power and with hierarchy, and to engage in practices where we focus on aligning our actions and our goals, aligning our impact on others with our profound sense of inner integrity. The Aquarius New Moon invites us to study our emotional relationship with freedom and to engage in practices that wake us up, liberate us from conditioned group trances, whether it's the trance of our family, the trance of our spiritual community, the trance of the media, all these group trances, to wake up from them, to liberate ourselves from them without recrimination, bitterness, or blame. The Pisces New Moon invites us to study our emotional relationship with sacred mystery and to practice blissfully dissolving boundaries and gracefully, sacredly, blissfully dissolving identity structures to deepen our intimacy with that sacred mystery. So for each of these monthly inquiries and practice sessions, we get the opportunity to explore. We get to explore the healthy ways that we've already integrated these specific emotional lessons and wisdoms and practices. We also get to explore how to refine them, deepen them, or embody them more fully. During each of these monthly sessions, as we do these practices, we also will discover the self-protective ways that we've been avoiding the challenge of learning these practices. And we discover how avoiding these practices creates and perpetuates suffering for ourselves and for others. And we learn through the journey from new moon to new moon, new ways to compassionately meet our self-protective reactive patterns and to skillfully guide them into more healthy habits of expression. So each new moon initiates an opportunity to intentionally engage in the cultivation of emotional wisdom through the particular practices that are highlighted by the sign that the moon is in. If you're more familiar with astrology and your astrological chart, you can specify that even more by looking at the house that the new moon falls within. But regardless of that, each sign is offering us a practice and a teaching session that we can intentionally choose, and we can take that astrological, which is kind of an archetypal invitation, and we can make it more individuated. We can make it more focused on our individual path. Just speaking the other day with a woman who was where the new moon is about to enter into Libra, and her discernment that she needs to learn how to stay in the tension in a particular family relationship, to self-regulate so that she can be a balanced healing agent for herself and for those in the family that wish to engage in a more constructive dialogue. Just knowing the nature of the new moon invitation, Libra, was sufficient for her to create the individuated intention for her, specifically for her life situation. And that's the key, specifically for your life situation, and then to identify 1 to 3 opportunities for you to engage in the practice. That's a key. It's a practice. It's a month-long practice and learning process. It's not a test of like getting it right or getting it wrong. You know, the truth is, as we're cultivating emotional wisdom, a lot of times we're going to be, quote, getting it wrong, but getting it wrong isn't a mistake. It's just like a mistake where we get to, oh, I see. Here's how to refine that. Here's how to shift that. Stay with the intention, in this case for her, which is to practice graceful self-regulation in the midst of tensions. Oh, I kind of got emotional. Not a problem. Rebalance. What do I need to do to stay more present? So identify 1 to 3 meaningful and modest practices that you can specifically engage in. If you know on Tuesday you're having a particular meeting, or later in the week at some other time, in the evening when you put your child to bed, this is a perfect time to practice. Whatever it is for you, specify how you can incarnate and explore and experiment with the new moon invitation. Now, what about the full moon? Well, we'll do a separate video on the full moon, but in short, the full moon is that 2-week punctuation mark where we get to reflect back in the light of that full moon on how have we been doing with our practice, and how can we more intentionally refine it as we move into the second portion of the cycle. But you don't need to wait for the full moon to do that reflection. At the end of each day, it's a beautiful time. In yoga, it's called Tarka, to look back at what was my intention, my emotional wisdom cultivation intention. How did I do? How can I refine it? What went below? What can I celebrate and embrace? And where can I improve and refine that expression going forward? So that's a walk through astrology for awakening and the practice of the new moon. If you have questions, email me, eric@wisdomheart.com. Thank you.